grab a Bible and turn open to John chapter 16 and verse 16. John chapter 16 and verse 16. Now, let me ask a question and you answer out loud. How many people is Jesus speaking to in this passage? 11. See how this works? When you read the Bible all the way through, you start to catch on to things, and things that you've maybe read 100 times over look a little bit different when we know the context. And we know the context of this is that Jesus it's his last evening before his crucifixion. And if you ever read a commentary or you ever read some theologian, they would call this the upper room discourse. Okay, so this is his discourse. This is his final address before he would be crucified. It's the same night that how about you say it? I've said it a bunch of times. What else did he do on this very night that he's talking with his disciples? What have we seen already? What did he do? You can say it. Washed feet. He did communion, the Lord's Supper, where he broke the bread and took the wine. And don't you remember that he continues to tell the disciples one very specific thing? He himself is going to do something. What's he keep telling the disciples he's going to do? He's leaving. And he is telling his disciples that he is leaving, but they don't always understand it. And by the way, before you get too carried away with that thought, just know that you have the privilege of future perspective. Like, you have perspective from the future. You get to see what they didn't see. You know the end of the story before it gets there. So don't be too down on the disciples for being confused when Jesus was talking about how he was going to leave. They didn't fully understand what he meant because they didn't have the perspective that you and I have. They didn't know about the cross and the grave and his ascension. They didn't know about all of that. So they were catching it beforehand and trying to figure out what he was talking about, rather than like us who know the whole story and we're putting the pieces together after the fact. So a while back, there was a show on television. It was called The Biggest Loser. Did you ever see that? Did you ever see The Biggest Loser? 4 of you saw that show. I doubt it. Some more of you. So you guys are like, what is it? Dads that don't pay for their kids? No, not that type of... No, listen, that's funny. So it's not that type of a loser. They were people who needed to lose weight. And so they were the biggest loser. That was the people who would lose the most weight were in the competition. It was funny. It's okay to laugh at that. And so it was these people in this competition to see who could lose the most weight. And when you watch that, now irony of this was it was my parents' favorite show. I hope they don't ever get Facebook because they're going to see this. It was my parents' favorite show, and they would sit down and eat a bowl of ice cream while they watched it. You can decide the irony there. And so, right. So they would sit down, they would watch a show, and every now and then I would be around and I would see the show. I didn't really watch it, but I would see it with them. And if you watch this show, here would be this person on a treadmill, and there's some scrawny, fit girl that is yelling at them. I mean, just getting in their face, yelling at them. And they're trying to run on this treadmill, and they're sweating, and they're crying, and they're upset. And she's trying to push them. And sometimes they'd be like lifting weights. Or other times, I saw one episode where this lady was crying over cake. I'm not even making that up. She was so upset about not getting this cake. I don't know if they had a challenge or whatever it was, but she didn't get any cake, and she is just bawling. And I'm watching this, and from the outside looking in, when you watch that, I promise you would not watch that and think to yourself, I'd like to start a workout program. Like, if you see the process, you see them sweating and crying and pushing so hard, it would not make you want to think, I want to start a workout program. But one night they were having the finale, and my parents were all excited with their bowl of ice cream and whatever else they had, and they were going to watch the finale, and I just happened to be there. And they were bringing these people out and showing their before and after pictures. And when they were showing these people who had been in this competition and what they looked like before, and then what the transformation was when they had made it to the end, now that was inspirational. Sometimes when we see the process of getting there, it's ugly. But many times it's the process of getting there that the Lord is using. And that's what Jesus is going to tell his disciples today. Look with me. It's John 16 and verse 16. Did I give you enough time to find it? All right, John 16 and verse 16, a little while and you will see me, and you will not see me. And again a little while and you will see me, because I go to the Father. And then some of his disciples said among themselves, what is this that he says to us, a little while and you will not see me, and again a little while and you will see me? because I go to the Father. They said, therefore, what is this that he says, a little while? We do not know what he is saying. Verse 19, now Jesus knew that they desired to ask him, and he said to them, are you inquiring among yourselves about what I said? A little while, and you will not see me, and again a little while, and you will see me? Most assuredly, I say to you, that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. And you will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned into joy. A woman, when she is in labor, has sorrow because her hour has come. But as soon as she gives birth to the child, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. Therefore, you now have sorrow, but I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice. And your joy no one will take away from you. And in that day you will ask me nothing. Most assuredly, I say to you, whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. Until now, you have asked nothing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, that your joy may be full. These things I've spoken to you in figurative language, but the time is coming when I no longer speak to you in figurative language, but I will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name, and I do not say to you that I shall pray the Father for you, for the Father himself loves you, because you have loved me, and have believed that I came forth from God. I came forth from the Father and have come into the world. Again, I leave the world and go to the Father. His disciples said to him, see, now you are speaking plainly and using no figure of speech. Now we are sure that you know all things and have no need that anyone should question you. By this we believe that you came forth from God. Verse 31, Jesus answered, do you now believe? Indeed, the hour is coming, yes, has come, that you will be scattered, each to his own, and will leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we turn to you in the name of your Son Jesus, and we ask you to bring your word to our hearts. Father, I can read it and I can preach it. And you know that I don't really know why you've called me. Father, I don't have a word for these people, but you do, and we pray for that. Father, I pray for that. I pray that you would give me your word, and that it would come alive to me, and that I would understand it. And I pray that these people who've come here this morning, that they would understand your word. And Father, I pray that we would all understand how it applies to our lives. And even more so, Father, I pray that we would apply it to our lives. We don't petition you in vain. We petition you in the name of your Son, Jesus, and ask you to bring your word alive to us and help us to apply it to our lives. Father, let us not leave this place the same as we came in. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, look at this, verse 16 of chapter 16. A little while, Jesus speaking to the 11 in the upper room, telling them, warning them that he's going to leave. He says, a little while, and you will not see me again. Now pay close attention to what happens here, because then he says this next line. I'm going to flip it here in a second so that you see what I'm saying, but just read it. A little while, and you will not see me, and again a little while, and you will see me, because I go to the Father. Now, he's talking to his disciples. He's been warning them that he's going to leave. And so when he says to them, a little while and you will not see me, and then a little while longer and you will see me, a lot of people get an impression there that Jesus is talking about his death and his resurrection. Well, I would contend that that does not seem accurate. Look at what it says. It doesn't say a little while and you will not see me because I go to the Father, and then a little while and you will see me. Do you see that? Look, he didn't separate the statements. Jesus didn't say a little while and you will not see me because I go to the Father, and then a little while you will see me. No, it's the other way. He said, you will not see me, then you will see me, and all of that statement is because I go to the Father. Do you see the difference there for just a moment? Do you at least see that he didn't separate the two statements with because I go to the Father? In other words, let me say it this way. You will not see me because I'm going to the Father, but then you will see me because I'm going to the Father. You see, understand that Jesus did not just die for you. If we separate those statements and he said, you will not see me because I go to the Father, would imply that he's going to the Father and that we're not going to be there. But that's not what he says. What he says is that he is going away and you're not going to see him but a little while longer, and then you will, because he is going to be with the Father. You see, Jesus died for you, but the grave couldn't hold him. He rose from the grave and then he ascended to the Father. And that's what he's speaking of when he left them. He wasn't speaking of his death when he said that I'm going to go away. Would Jesus have been speaking about his death when he said, I'm going to go away and you're going to be filled with sorrow? No. The death of Jesus brought them an immediate sorrow, yes, but the death of Jesus is not sorrowful for you and I. Sure, it is humbling. But that does not bring me sorrow because Jesus did not stay in the grave. You see, they put him in the grave, they killed him on the cross, and that was tragic to watch. I'm sure that for his mother and for his disciples, I'm sure that that was painful to watch. But don't you know what Jesus told them? He said, destroy this body and in 3 days I'll raise it up. And that's exactly what he did. And 3 days later he got up out of the grave and then he went to the Father, and you have an intercessor between you and the Father right now. His name is Jesus. And guess what? Because he's with the Father, because he left us and went with the Father, one day when I leave this earth, whether by death or rapture or however it happens, I guess there's really not another option, but you get what I'm saying. By death or by rapture, guess what? I'm going to go and be with Jesus. And I get to be with the Father because that's where Jesus is. Look at it for yourself. It's in John chapter 14. Look back at John chapter 14. I won't turn you to a lot of verses today. I think this is the only one. John 14, well, I might turn to another. I make no promises. John 14 and verse 1. This is where this all started with Jesus. This whole, not his whole ministry, but this discourse thing started. Look at what he says. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Get it? Jesus said, I am going away, and you're not going to see me, but then you are going to see me again. And when you see me again, it is because I am with the Father. Now, he's not in the grave. His remains aren't here. His dust isn't here. His bones aren't here. The body of Jesus got up out of the grave, and he is with the Father, and you get to be with the Father as well because Jesus is there. So Jesus says in John 16 and 16, a little while you will not see me, and again a little while, and you will see me because I go to the Father. The disciples didn't fully understand that. They didn't have this future perspective that we have. And so look at what happens in verse 17. I won't read the whole thing again. But some of the disciples said among themselves, what is this that he says? A little while you won't see me, and again a little while you will see me because I go to the Father. They were confused. They're saying, what does he mean by this? What does he mean by this statement? They are confused because they're still before Jesus has died and rose and ascended to the Father. They don't understand what we do, and so they're confused. But I love what happens starting in verse 19. Jesus knew that they desired to ask him, and he said to them, I love this, are you inquiring among yourselves about what I said? You get what just happened there? The disciples are looking at each other and like, what does he mean? A little while. A little while? A little while he won't see me, a little while he will see me because he goes to the Father. We have no clue what he's saying. Josh, do you know what he's saying? Sherry, you got it? Ray, you got it? Somebody's got to have it. And they're asking each other. And Jesus calls them out and says, are you guys inquiring among yourselves? Are y'all asking each other what I'm right here. I said it. Do you get what he says here? Look, he says are you inquiring among yourselves? Is this not exactly what the world does? We skip the source of information and we look to each other for the answers. Right? I mean, in the world of science, wouldn't so many things be answered if they would just look to the source? Right? How about salvation? How should we inquire about salvation? Is that what the church sets up? Is that the church doctrine? Is that how we figure out salvation? Why don't we try going to the source? You get where I'm going with this? You see, if you want to know about how the Lord can save you, you might want to go to the source. If you want to know about creation, you might want to go to the source. If you'd like to understand God's Word, I got a really good idea. How about going to the source? Jesus says, are you inquiring among yourselves what I said? So he says this, I'm just going to explain it to you. Look, a little while and you will not see me, and again a little while and you will see me. Most assuredly I say to you, I'm in verse 20, most assuredly I say to you, that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice, and you will be sorrowful. Let's just stop there for a moment and assess what Jesus has been saying, that He's going to go to the Father, and there's going to be a time span where we're not going to have Him present with us. And Jesus says, you all are going to lament, you're going to weep, while the world is rejoicing. And is that not what we see today? You see, we weep and we lament because of this, because we know that God loves us, and we know that God sent His Son for us, and we know God has a good plan for us, and we know that God has a good will for us. And when we see our neighbors and our friends and the media and just mainstream society going completely away from God, and yet we know that God that they're turning away from is the very answer to their problems, that's pretty hard. And then one day it kind of hits home, doesn't it? Isn't there a day that happens when you start seeing all of what you think is away from you hits home, when your family member starts to go along with what they're seeing and they start turning away from God? Or somebody in your church family. I'll never forget the day that we had a youth member in our church who'd been saved and been baptized, and then he came back to me and he sat in my office and looked me right in the face and said to me, I don't think I believe anymore. And I asked him why he didn't believe anymore, and he went on to give me this convoluted answer about evolution and science and whatever, and school had just talked with him and talked to him and talked God down until such a point that he didn't want to believe in God anymore. And I promise you, when he walked out of my office, my heart was heavy for that young man. Because on that day it hit home, it wasn't just some guy on Facebook, but it was somebody that I really knew that didn't want to turn to the Lord for His answers anymore. You see, the world will rejoice, but we will have sorrow. That's what Jesus is warning. He says, you're going to have sorrow, you're going to weep, and you're going to lament, but the world is going to rejoice. But this is the best part. This is where we're getting to. Read this with me. In verse 20, most assuredly I say to you that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. And this right here, and you will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned to joy. Jesus says He's going to take your sorrow and turn it into joy. And He uses this example. I couldn't come up with another illustration here because He gave a great one. He said it's like a woman who's giving birth. Now, I have personally been in the room when my wife was giving birth. And I can tell you that experience, people say birth is beautiful. Liars. Okay, so it's not. It's not. Life is beautiful, the process, whew. Okay, so they asked us if we wanted a mirror. No, get out of here. What is wrong with you? Messed up people. And so we're in this room. It's true, you know I'm right. And so here's the thing. We're in this room, and Sarah is sweating, and her face is just puffed and swollen, and she's breathing hard, and she's grabbing these rails, and her whole body was just flexed. And they warned me, they're like, don't take her hand. Now, this is what they tell me. They're like, don't take her hand, because if you take her hand, she'll start squeezing and she won't be able to let go. Don't grab her hand. You don't keep your hand away from hers. This is what the nurses are telling me. And then one nurse made me sit down and gave me orange juice. But that's true. And I'm watching this process, and she is, at one point, we just get to the point, I look up, and she is just crying. I'm talking just out of pain, crying. We watched a television show or a movie or something, and there was a scene where this woman was giving birth in a hospital. And Phoebe looked over at Sarah and she said, Mom, is that what it was when you had me? And Sarah tried to buff her, but the next day I heard Phoebe go, I don't want to have kids. I'm telling you, the process looked really, really hard. But the moment that you hear that sweet little baby cry, I promise you, Sarah's tears, I'm instantaneous. If you've been there with a woman who's given birth, instantaneous tears of pain go to tears of joy. Am I right? They take that little baby and it's crying, they wrap it up real quick in a cloth, and they put it in Mama's arms, and Mama starts to giggle, and she pets at its nose, and she takes the little blanket and she wipes at it, and her sorrow, her pain is immediately turned to joy. And Jesus says this, He says, He is going to take our sorrow and turn it into joy. Now that is against what the liars are telling you. The liars are telling you that Jesus is going to take away your sorrow. The false prophets are telling you that Jesus is going to remove your sorrow, that you're a Christian, you don't have to be sorrowful. You're a Christian, you don't have to go through struggles. You're a Christian, you don't have to be poor. You're a Christian, you don't have to have pain. Jesus did not say, I will take it away. He said, your sorrow is going to be turned into joy. You see, there's a difference when Jesus takes your sorrow and turns it into something new versus Him just removing it from you. What we would love, right? I'm right about this. What we would love is for Him to take it away. Take away the pain, take away the problem, maybe even move us into a different position. Take it away. But that's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, I'll go one better. I'll take the thing that burns and I'll make it bright. He says, I'm going to take your pain, I'm going to take your sorrow, and I'm going to turn that pain and that sorrow into joy. The Bible is full of illustrations like this. Anybody remember the story of Joseph? Remember Joseph, coat of many colors, Joseph? He had a bunch of brothers, and his brothers got so mad at that coat and got so mad at his dreams and were so mad at him for being his dad's favorite that his brothers took him and threw him in a pit. And they were going to kill him. If you read the story in context, they were going to kill their brother, Joseph. But the oldest brother said, no, don't do that. Let's not kill him. So they did him one better, and they sold him into slavery. And then while being a slave, he was such a good worker, and he was so blessed by God that even while being a slave, he kind of worked his way up. But don't you remember that as he was a servant in the house, don't you remember that the wife came to him and she wanted to have an affair with him? And when Joseph did the right thing and said, no, I don't want to do that she accused him of rape? Sold into slavery and falsely accused of rape. And so they took him and they threw him in the deepest part of the dungeon. And even there were some guys there that had some dreams, and Joseph interpreted those dreams. And do you remember what happened? Joseph said, hey, when you get out, because the one dream had told the guy he was going to get out of prison, and he said, when you get out, don't forget about me. But you know what happened, don't you? His friends forgot about him. So he was abandoned by his family and sold into slavery, accused of rape, forgotten by his friends. And then one day when they pulled him out, the Pharaoh had a dream and nobody could interpret it. And somebody remembered, hey, there's this guy down in the jail, in the prison, and he can interpret dreams. And so they went and they got him out and he interpreted the dream. And do you remember what God happened as God established him in this position of prominence? But even that really didn't bring the joy, did it? What brought the joy was when his family that had thrown him in the pit all those years ago and sold him into slavery, when they were starving and they came to Egypt to find food. And there was Joseph. They didn't even recognize him. He looked so different. And Joseph was able to provide for his family. And even later on, the rest of the story I won't go over, but even later on, his family was scared of Joseph. Remember that when they were scared of him? And do you remember what Joseph said? He said, don't be scared of me and don't be upset. This was all because the Lord was going to save you so that you wouldn't starve to death. I mean, could you imagine being Moses' mom when she had to throw her son into the Nile River? I pointed out in a church service a few years ago, and somebody said to me they'd never thought of it that way. Did you ever thought about the fact that the Nile River is full of crocodiles? Can you imagine the mother that has to put her child into the Nile River full of crocodiles? Can you imagine what that must have felt like? And so his mother set him down and put him in a basket and set him in the basket and floated him down the river. And then she sent his sister and said, go watch and see where he ends up. And sure enough, he got picked up by Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter took him in. And then she said, well, we need a Hebrew woman to nurse him. And so she sent, and you know the story is that Moses' own mom got to go in and nurse her own child while he was growing up. And she got to see him grow up. And God used that and trained him up in the law there in Egypt so that then later he could give his own law. How many times throughout the Bible do we have to see that God takes our pain, He takes our sorrow, and He turns it into joy? Look at what happened with David. David was cast out by his own son who tried to take the kingdom. He was running around in the woods with a band of misfits, running around in the woods with a bunch of people that were hiding from his own son who was trying to kill his own dad. And you know what we got from that? Half of the Psalms. Half of what you read in the Psalms that we talk about how beautiful they are came because of David's pain and because of his sorrow. And I'll give you the best one yet. Only Jesus could take an instrument of death like the cross and turn it into a symbol of peace. God is always transforming. And what He promises you is not that He will take your pain away, but that He will take your pain and transform it into joy. And look what He says. After the woman giving birth scenario, we're in verse 23. And in that day you will ask me nothing. Most assuredly I say to you that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He will give you. Until now you've asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. These things I have spoken to you in figurative language, but the time is coming I will no longer speak to you in figurative language, but I will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name, and I do not say that I shall pray the Father for you, for the Father Himself loves you, because you have loved me and believed that I came forth from God. Now, are you ready for this? I read a commentary, they were way wrong. They said not only does Jesus transform your pain into sorrow, which I agree with, they said that Jesus uses pain to transform and sorrow to transform your prayer life. Now listen, I will tell you something. Go through something hard in life, it'll drive you to your knees. Right? I mean, how many times have we been driven to our knees because of some problem in our lives? But listen, that is not what transforms our prayer life. What transforms our prayer life, according to Jesus? Is it pain? Read it with me. I'm asking you a question. What transforms our prayer life? We're so quiet today, I got to get you talking. You're making me sweat up here. 23, look, and in that day you will ask nothing of me, most assuredly, whatever you ask who? The Father. Let's try that again. One person. We got this whole group of people. One person. Let's try again. We're all reading together, and you're going to answer at the end. And Sherry gave you the answer if you were paying attention. And in that day you will ask me nothing. Most assuredly I say to you, whatever you ask the Father in my name, He will give you. Until now you've asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. Skip down a little bit and see it again. You see it in verse 26. In that day you will ask in my name, and I do not say that I shall pray the Father for you, for the Father Himself loves you. Is it pain, according to the Scriptures, is it the pain and sorrow that transforms your prayer life? What is it that transforms your prayer life? That you can go directly to the Father. My dad, this past week, it was Chick-fil-A Day. If you don't know what Chick-fil-A Day is, you dress up like a cow, you get free Chick-fil-A. That's their deal. My kids went. I didn't get to go this year, but they go and they like pin little things to them, make themselves look like a cow. So you go, you dress up like a cow, and they give you a Chick-fil-A sandwich and some waffle fries and a drink. Well, my dad, we had like 5 people working with us that day. It was a few years ago. And my dad says, well, we can't all leave all at once, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll dress up like a cow, and I'll ride my motorcycle, dressed up like a cow. I will ride my motorcycle from here in Buckner all the way to Westport Road to go get Chick-fil-A. And so he calls, and he talks to some guy, and he says, hey, look, I can't bring all 5 people from the store. Can't shut the store down for some free chicken sandwiches. But I tell you what I'll do. I'll dress like a cow, and I will ride my motorcycle from here to there. Well, the guy immediately says, no. Can't do it. It's 1 meal per person. Can't do it. And so my dad, just being my dad, he's a real bold guy, and he says, he just doesn't quit easily. And he's like, well, can I talk to your manager? So the manager gets on the phone, and my dad says, look, I don't even want the drinks because I can't carry those on a motorcycle. All I want, I'm going to ride on my motorcycle dressed up like a cow from here to you for Chick-fil-A Day, and I want 5 sandwiches and 5 fries. Well, the lady on the other end of the phone, the manager, she says, deal. You got to drive here dressed like a cow, and I'll give you 5 sandwiches and 5 fries. Well, my dad gets there, and everybody thought he was like a mascot. I mean, Ashley remembers this. There's pictures, and my dad's eating it up. He took the little mask piece, and he put it on his helmet, And he had udders on this thing, on this cow costume. And it was pretty, I'm telling the truth, aren't I? And he's there on his motorcycle, and people are coming up taking pictures with him on his motorcycle. You see people in the pictures like pressing their face up against the window, wanting to see my dad on his motorcycle. And so the manager comes out, she gives him the five sandwiches and the 5 fries, and she puts in a stack of coupons for free stuff from Chick-fil-A. And she says, "This was so great, will you do this again next year?" And my dad said, "Yeah, absolutely." And she said, "Just make sure when you come that you ask for me. Because if you talk to the employees, they don't have the right. Like they can't say yes to this. They can only give 1 meal per person. But talk directly to me, and I'll fill you up a bag of stuff, however many employees you have, but you right here on your motorcycle dressed like a cow. But you got to talk to me directly." Listen, sometimes you just can't go to anybody else but the source. God has said to you, you can come directly to Him through the person of Jesus, and that is transforming to your prayer life. Let me say it another way. You don't have to pray to a saint. You don't have to pray to an angel. You don't have to pray to Mary. I can't tell you the number of people that come to me and ask me to pray for them, and I try to encourage them and say, you can pray. You can pray for you. And you know what they say to me? Well, you have a little more pull than I have. No, I don't. I don't have any more pull than anybody else. I am a messed up, wretched sinner who doesn't deserve to be here. That God has said, I'll make you a preacher, and that's it. That's the only pull I have is that I get to talk to you for 40 minutes. That's it. You have access to the Father. You can go right to the source, the one who can actually make a difference. You don't have to ask anybody else. God said this. Jesus, the Son of God, said in verse 27, "For the Father loves you, because you have loved me and have believed that I came forth from God." Are you ready for this? Do you actually believe that? Have you ever put your faith in Jesus, that He came forth from God, is the Son of God, who died for you and rose for you? Because when you put your faith in Him, He saves you. Yes, He saves you and gives you eternity. But don't you also know that He gives you access to the Father, and that completely transforms your prayer life? Now look, not only does He transform our sorrow and our pain into joy, but He transforms our prayer life when we know the Father. And look at this. Come down to verse 29. His disciples said to Him, "See, now you are speaking plainly and using no figure of speech. Now we are sure that you know all things. You have no need that anyone should question you. By this we believe that you came forth from God." I love it when this happens. Like they're ready. You see that? They're like, now we get it. Okay. I don't really know if they really felt like they got it or not. Remember, they'd just been asking each other what Jesus meant by the whole "He'll be with you and then He won't be with it. He'll be with us and He won't be with us" statement. They're asking each other about that. And now they said, now we know. Now we get it. And now we believe. And look at what Jesus says. Do you now believe? Verse 31. Do you now believe? Indeed, the hour is coming. Yes, has now come, that you will be scattered, each to his own, and will leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. You understand that the disciples just said, "Yes, Jesus, we believe. We believe that you came forth from the Father." Put them together. Work backwards with me. They're saying, "Yes, we believe you came from the Father," because Jesus said, if you believe that I came from the Father and you believe in me, that you have access to the Father. The Father loves you because you believed in me. Right? Let's start back at verse 28. "I came forth from the Father and have come into the world again, and I leave the world and go to the Father." And His disciples said, "See, now you're speaking plainly. Now we get it." And Jesus questions that in verse 31 and says, "Do you really get it? Because the hour is coming." Actually, the hour is. What does He mean by the hour now is? What does that mean? It's happening right now. This is the 11 in the upper room. The next thing that happens is Jesus is going to be arrested. He's going to be crucified. He said the hour is coming, and the hour now is that you're going to be scattered. Do you really believe? Because the hour is coming that you're actually going to be scattered. Are you ready for this? Can you have faith and still fail? According to Jesus, yes, you can. I got a good one. Here's a good one for you. Could you have the assurance of Jesus and still fear? You see, Jesus said, do you really believe? You're claiming it, you're saying it, but do you really believe? Because the hour is coming, and actually right now is, that you're going to be scattered, and you're going to leave me alone. And look at what He goes on to say in verse 33. "These things I have spoken to you that in me you may have peace. Don't glaze over that. He just told them, I'm going to go to the cross and you're going to run away. You're going to be scattered. But I'm telling these things because I'm mad at you for running away like chickens. That's not what he said, is it? He said, I tell you these things that you might have peace. Can you have faith and still fail? Can you have assurance and still fear? Of course you can. And Jesus understands that. You know why? Because of what he says right here in verse 31. Look what he's saying. That in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. Not you might have, but you will have. In this world you will have tribulation. It is going to come. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Only Jesus can take what's in this world that hurts so bad and transform it into joy. And he says, I've told you this so that when you're scattered, so that when you fail, so that when you fear, you can have peace. The same disciples that very night would run away from Jesus could hang on to his words and say, he still loves me and I still have peace with God. Not because of me, look at me, I'm a chicken who ran off. But because Jesus loves me. Because I've believed in him. Only Jesus can transform us in that way. That's true transformation. My uncle decided a few years ago he was a vacation guy. You ever know the vacation guy? The guy that like somehow has like 9 weeks vacation every year and goes to all these different... I don't know how he gets it. I've been working at my job for 13 years. I get a week. And now I have to fight for that. I'm right. I'm telling you the truth. But you know that guy that's like the vacation, I don't know, it's like the professional vacationers. And somehow they've just got like this endless stream of money that they get to go to like these wonderful places. He's always like Florida or Tennessee or Georgia or Bora Bora or something. I mean, he was always like crazy out there place. He's got all these wonderful pictures. Well, one year he decided that he was going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And it was him and his son. And by the way, if you don't know about that, I think that statistically speaking, at least one person every month dies trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And thousands of people every year are brought back down from the mountain and have to be helicoptered off. There are literally like helicopter services that do nothing but just go get people from the mountain and take them to the hospital because so many people get hurt trying to climb that mountain. And my uncle decided he wanted to climb that mountain. And I'll remember he grew his beard out because it was going to be so cold at the top that he was going to grow his beard out real full and thick as kind of a layer of protection. And so he started growing out his beard and he was doing a little bit of training. He was working on his cardio and doing some training about 6 months out. And he was really working at this, and him and his son went. And I tried to get the picture. I could not find the picture, but I have a picture of him holding our Walker Fabrics sign. He wanted like some proof that he was there, and so he's like holding our sign at the top of this mountain when he was at the summit. And when he brings us that picture of him holding that sign, he said to us how hard it was, and he was talking about how painful it was, how what it does to your muscles and what it does to your body to climb that mountain, and how hard it was to breathe. And some people had to have oxygen, even like in their tents at night, they would have to have these oxygen tanks. And they basically had got real close and camped out one night, and then the next morning they got up and they went to the summit real early so they could see the sunrise from the summit of this mountain. And he's telling this story, and his wife says to him, "That sounds awful." And it did, by the way. Like his whole story, it didn't sound appealing. Like, I don't want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm not in for that. She said, "That sounds awful." And he looked at all of us at the table and he said, "That's what made the summit so great." That is what Jesus does for us in this life. No matter what we go through, no matter what is happening, know this. At the very end, know this. There is nothing that's going to happen to us in this world that is to be compared with the glory that is to come when we're with Him. And so we might not see Him for a time, but when we see Him again, when we're with the Father, we're going to know all things, and it's all going to be clear to us. And that's what His promise is to us, to transform what the pain in this life is into joy. But that only happens if you've put your faith in Jesus Christ. Listen, I got to close with this. Let's just close this for a minute. I cannot stand here and tell you about the peace and joy that Jesus gives and let you walk out of here and think that because you've heard this sermon that Jesus offers you that peace and that joy. He offers it to you on the basis of faith. And if you don't have your faith in Jesus, you don't get the joy that He offers. Do we understand that principle that Jesus says that you have to believe in Him as the Son of God who died for you and rose for you, and that there is no other name given among men whereby ye must be saved? That joy is not for every person. Was Jesus talking to a whole group of people when He was saying these things? Was He talking to the whole crowd and saying that He's going to give them peace and turn their pain and sorrow into joy? No, He was talking to the 11, those who believed in Him. If you want the joy and the peace that Jesus offers, it only comes when you put your faith in Him. And that's where we'll close today. Let's everybody stand up on your feet. And as we have time of invitation, ask yourself this question. Do you have peace with God through His Son, Jesus? Miss Sherry, what's our closing hymn today? Nothing but the blood. We're going to do things a little different. We're going to go right into our song today for our invitation. And then at the end of our song, if you want to make a decision, you've got a chance to during our song. And then we're going to close in prayer at the very end of our song.